Seeing at 6 p.m., I'd like to call the April 5th, 2023 regular meeting of the Kenai City Council to order and ask that if you, first of all, I'd like to welcome everybody here this evening. Hello, everybody. If you're able, would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Winger,
Present.
Student Representative Thibodeau,
Hello.
Mayor Gabriel,
Here.
Vice Mayor Baisden,
Here.
Councilmember Askin,
Here.
Councilmember Dothett,
Here.
Councilmember Nackstead,
Here.
and Councilmember Sonart.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Council, we have no laydown before us this evening, so we'll move straight to agenda approval. Councilmember Nackstead.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move for approval of the agenda and request unanimous consent.
Second.
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. Next, we have the agenda rather is approved. Next, we move to the consent agenda. Councilmember Nackstead.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move for approval of the consent agenda and request unanimous consent.
Second.
Is there anybody from the body that'd like to amend the consent agenda at this time? Seeing none, I'd ask the clerk to please read that into the record.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Approval of the regular meeting minutes of March 15th, 2023. New business, action approval, bills to be ratified, brought to you by the administration. Action approval, purchase orders and purchase order amendments requiring council approval in accordance with Kenai Municipal Code 7.15.020, brought to you by the administration. Action approval, non-objection to the renewal of a liquor license for Don Jose's LLC DBA Don Jose's Mexican Restaurant, license number 3039, brought to you by the city clerk. Ordinance number 3342, 2023, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the Congregated Housing Fund for cost in excess of budgeted amount, brought to you by the administration. Public hearing on April 19th, 2023. Ordinance number 3343, 2023, accepting and appropriating a volunteer fire assistance grant from the United States Department of Agriculture Forest Service passed through the State of Alaska Division of Forestry for the purchase of forestry firefighting equipment, brought to you by the administration. Public hearing on April 19th, 2023. And ordinance number 3344, 2023, amending Kenai Municipal Code, Chapter 8.20, fireworks control by removing references to city permits, which are redundant to the state's fireworks display permit. Brought to you by the administration. Public hearing on April 19th, 2023, and that is your consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there anybody in the general public that'd like to testify to anything that is on the consent agenda, which was just read into the record? And they're also denoted with an asterisk next to them on the agenda. Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved. That brings us to scheduled public comment. And this evening, we have Samantha Springer, our new executive director for the Kenai Chamber of Commerce and Visitor Center. Yeah, you can come up here, Samantha, and just click the, you can either stand or sit, but just see if you would click the microphone on, if you would, please.
Sure.
There you go.
Okay. Hi. Thanks for having me. So I just wanted to introduce myself. I've obviously met some of you, but not all of you, and I look forward to meeting everybody and getting to know you all. And again, thank you for having me tonight. So I just did bring some announcements for the chamber, things that are going on right now and things that we're going to be moving toward. Currently, we're looking for volunteers. We're trying to do a volunteer list. I've been posting it out on social media and just trying to get more of an ongoing list so that we can have constant volunteers coming in and out of our events without having to burn out anyone. And I'd really appreciate some help and sharing that if possible. It would really help a lot. And then we're working a lot with the Soldotna Chamber, so we're going to be having a lot more joint events to try and bring the peninsula together and create that community feel. So we have a joint chamber luncheon next week on April 12th with Guardian Flight at the Soldotna Sports Complex, and then April 19th we have our own event for Marathon Petroleum with Bruce Jackman, and he's doing a presentation on Kenai Refinery. And then also, we have our Mother's Day Bazaar coming up, April 29th and 30th. We're looking for vendors, food trucks, volunteers. And our 38th annual fundraiser is going to be June 24th. We'd love to have all of you there. From 6 to 9, it's going to be on site at the Kenai Chamber. So, and it's going to be an outside event. And I'm definitely not going to take up 10 minutes. So that's pretty much
Thank
all
you,
I had.
Samantha.
Yeah.
Is there anybody from the council that has any questions or comments for Ms. Springer? Councilmember Winger.
Hi. I haven't got a chance to meet you, so I just want to say hello and thank you for coming and introducing yourself tonight and welcome. And I know I've messaged back that I definitely want to volunteer and help out, and I look forward to the events and everything you guys are going to put on this year.
Awesome. And thank you. I appreciated you reaching out. Thanks. Yeah.
Any further questions or comments? Councilmember Nexton.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thank you for coming tonight, and I was at the Chamber today and met you for the first time, finally. And it hasn't been very long, but anyway, you seem to have an awful lot of energy and ideas, and I like all that energy, and I look forward to what you're going to do.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Further questions, comments? Well, like I say, it's a pleasure meeting you today over at Chamber, and look forward to working with you and see you around here. And I appreciate you coming here and giving us a little update and introducing yourself.
Yeah. Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next up is unscheduled public comment. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to address the council this time on any item that is not on the agenda or consent agenda? Mr. Rizzo. We just give your name and whether you're a resident of the city or not.
My name is Joe Rizzo. I reside at 55761 Mantesta Avenue, which is Kenai mailing-wise. Physically, it's out on the North Road. I really just came by today to kind of give the council and the mayor an update on where we are with the Triumvirate Theater project. Got some really exciting news. We were waiting for our last application for a big grant was from the Murdoch Trust, and we were waiting for word back on that. And so they are going to fund $400,000 of the $500,000 that we asked for. So we're pretty happy about that. And so with that, we have basically got a final figure of how much we have for this project. And so we're at $3.2 million. And we have been working with the architects, and we have put together a plan that we think we can do within that budget. And the RFP goes out Friday, so how exciting is that? I do want to thank the council and the mayor for all their support on this. It's been over 2 years since Triumvirate burned down, and it's been quite a long journey and quite a learning experience for all of us in this little nonprofit to be able to put this together. But we're very grateful to the city for offering that property. It made a huge difference when we went out and asked for support from other foundations. Just getting that street cred of having the municipality supporting it and putting real property up as a show of that support was a big deal for us. And so I appreciate that. And I also just want to mention that I'm very excited to have Terry on as a city manager. I called him a couple weeks ago and to discuss some of the things about this project. And I started like yammering in, and he was like, okay, I know you have a lot to tell me, but could we just pause for a minute and just think about how amazing it is? Did you guys ever think that you were actually going to make this happen? And so I really appreciated that from him, that kind of acknowledgement of that this has not been an easy thing to do, but we're very, very excited. So anyway, thanks to all of you.
Thank you, Joe. Any questions for Vice Mayor Basin?
Thanks, Joe. Pretty exciting. Am I hearing your Godfather voice on the radio right now? Can you not answer questions in that voice?
You know what? We probably could handle it. You all should come, by the way, to the Codfather. It's playing on the 21st and 22nd. It's going to be great fun.
How will your RFP be shared? How will how will people find that?
Well, because because some of this is USDA funding, I think that's a requirement of the newspaper, so it will be going out in the Clarion, I believe Friday.
Would you have a completion date of next year or 2 years out? How long would it take, do you think?
It's going to be a design build, so I guess we're going to have to wait and see who gets the bid and what they think the schedule is.
Thanks.
My hope is, and this is only a hope, is that we will be able to get the excavation work done by this fall, and then that way we'd be ready to go in May. My hope was always that, hey, it's May, let's go. We're gonna start building this place, but there's still a lot of hoops to jump through with this congressionally directed spending. And
Thanks. Good work on the project.
thank you.
Further questions of Mr. Rizzo, Councilmember Axon?
Thank you. I wanted to say that I think you've moved ahead brilliantly, in all of every step of the way since your disaster, frankly, from ground zero under the ashes to where you are right now. To be able to do that is nothing short of brilliant.
Well, thank you.
I look forward to the structure being done probably next summer sometime, but.
Further questions?
It's pretty exciting to go from where you guys were at and originally that was my grandfather's old auto shop back in, the 60s and 70s to where you guys are going to be now in a pretty much a state-of-the-art building for these kids to express themselves. And I think it's going to be a great community asset, and it's really neat to see it moving forward finally.
Thank you.
Further questions, comments? Just like say, yeah, great journey. I enjoyed your fundraiser where you had your film, Out of the Ashes, was that the name of it? Yeah, very good production, and enjoyed that. Well, so you just see you're just on that energy on the right path, and certainly the city of Kenai obviously supports that. And if there's anything else that we can do throughout the process, looking forward, certainly reach out, Joe.
Linda has been just wonderful with planning and helping us. Moving forward.
Very good, thank you. Is there anybody else from the general public that'd like to speak to any item that is not on the agenda or consent agenda? Ms. Nelson.
Same old thing.
And no, I'm on, ooh. This Friday, instead of our usual first Thursday opening show reception, is this Friday. And it is the annual, and my gosh, I can't remember the year, it's something like 40, 50 years. It's a lot of time, a lot of decades that have gone into this school kids show. And just to refresh your memory and everybody else, this is the artwork from the schools in the borough that have art teachers. It's not all of them, unfortunately. They don't all have art teachers. And we're minus Seward this year just because their former art teacher left a few months ago, so we're minus their work. And contrary to most years, there's several pieces that are great, but they're a little smaller than usual. So it's just a little bit condensed, but nevertheless, it's still artwork on the walls, on the floor, on the pedestals, from the front door to the back wall in the jail, near the jail. So 5 o'clock on Friday, you're welcome, open to the public. And I want to give a plug to the teachers because they really carry all the water on this. We don't do much for it other than put the signage up for each of the artwork pieces and some of the general signage that's on the wall. But they make food for the reception. They choose the artwork. They figure out the prizes, and there are prizes for some of the kids, including Best of Show and first, second, third place, and however they want to make those decisions. One of my favorite things about this reception is that there's, again, a lot of family people that show up for it, and I love watching the siblings of the kids who get awards. Because here are these, oh God, I'm going to cry again. can tell the kids who are very proud of their brother or sister who's, I'm sorry, who's getting an award because they kind of start, twisting their toe in the dirt, so to speak. It's just very cute. So I hope to see you Friday night. Thanks.
Any
Questions for me?
Any questions for Ms. Nelson?
By the way, we do have our Rasmussen grant slowly chugging along here and need to get to the next step pretty quickly here, and I think we are, but Leslie Morton is chairing that effort. I cannot tell you too much about it. I should say we want to thank the city also for being the project manager for that. That's a big help to us too. And kudos to Joe.
Yeah. Thank you, Marianne. Always a pleasure. Is there anybody else from the general public who'd like to speak to the council at this time on any item that is not on the agenda or consent agenda? I would like to recognize Assembly Member Tyson Cox in our audience this evening. Seeing no one else.
Mayor, if I could make a request.
Yes.
It's out of normal order, but Kathy Romaine is here from our senior center, and if it's okay with Terry, if she, and her, if she could give us a quick report over recent doings. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Ms. Romaine.
Yes. First of all, thank you. Thank you to everybody who came, supported us. What a great time, huh? Yeah. It was a great time. We're still putting things away, still catching up on sleep, and had a fun time. It's just a wonderful response. We'd had a committee meeting today talking about next year, working on the date. You'll know by the end of the month what our theme is and what the date is. So excited about that. It was the best one we've ever had. As they brought out at the chamber today, our dessert auction sold 15,500, which is a shock. I mean, lemon meringue pie went really high. Didn't realize lemon meringue was such a hit this year, but it definitely was. But and then Alaska Airlines, with our Alaska Airlines tickets that they donated, and we figured out how to Red, our administrative assistant, that was her pick the pony thing, which was really a popular thing. So we'll be doing that again. Maybe not a pony, but just be something else that you pick next year. So anyway, it was great, and really can't say thank you enough to Senior Connection. We have at least one board member here tonight, but it was a big event, our best one ever, 14 years, but this one was leaps and bounds over our previous one. So.
Awesome. Any questions for Mr. Rain? Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Kathy, just thank you and your entire crew over there for their just diligence in every little aspect of the event. You guys were thorough in planning months and months ahead, and I am a firm believer that when you plan ahead of time, you have successful events, and that definitely showed. It was a great time. We enjoyed it, and definitely look forward to going next year. But just thank everybody for their hard work on it.
Any further questions, comments?
I just like to say it was first time I'd been able to actually make it, and it was a great event. Me and the wife had a lot of fun, and my kids thoroughly enjoyed their peach cobbler.
And you won the airline tickets, don't forget that.
The wife's planning her trip already. Notice I said her trip.
Councilmember next then.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, my wife and I and everybody at the table and everybody around me had a great time, and there was so much organization. I mean, just everything seemed to go well. From all of the flyers, everything at the table, all the little details, and all of that. And I noticed the volume in the room just got happier. Everybody was just and then we did the auction, and that all went very well. And I think slicker than in the past. Actually, you did a few little tweaks there. Thought it really went well, and some of the other things you did too. So I don't know how it could be any better. It was wonderful.
Further questions, comments? Yeah, I'd like to say too, just to wrap up here, that we had a great time. Time just flew that whole night, and like Councilmember Next had said, all the little details were really super neat. But certainly passed along at least my appreciation. I know Missy does so much over there, and just and she's pretty humble, but definitely She's very appreciated with all the work that she did there and the staff. And of course, getting the volunteers to serve to the younger kids was a nice touch.
If I can say, we had 4 cadets and a leader from Civil Air Patrol. Next year, we have them booked for the night, and we'll have about a dozen there next year. And they come in their dress uniform, which is pretty cool. So it was a little slow getting dinner out, but we had new servers. And so they're learning, and that was pretty nice, really. And we also had a Kenai Senior High School honor student who was also serving. And one of our, Velda Geller, who's president of Senior Connection, her great-grandson also came in. So it was just a great intergenerational, great time. Missy, I asked her for cookies if she had any, and she said, oh, I'll make some. So there's cookies by the coffee during break. So.
There you go. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. And I got to tell you, it's one of my favorite events of the year. So I was already looking forward to next year. Thank you, Kathy. Is there anybody else from the general public that'd like to address the council at this time on any item that's not on the agenda or consent agenda? Do we have anybody online? Seeing nobody else wish to testify, we'll move to public hearings. We have under item D1, ordinance number 3339-2023, accepting and appropriating donations to the Kenai Animal Shelter for care of animals. Pleasure, council. Councilman Axon.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to enact ordinance 3339, 2023.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3339-2023? See none in the audience or online. We'll move it back to council. Comments from council. Councilman Winger.
Thank you, Mary Gabriel. I would just like to, through the memo, would just like to thank all the individual donors and point out that Kenaitze Indian Tribe donated $1,000 towards the services for the animal shelter. Just want to point that out because they've been an amazing partnership with the city of Kenai, and they're definitely paying attention to all aspects of our departments, and it's very much appreciated that they would to support. So I just want to say thanks for the individual donors and to Kenaitze.
Thank you. Further comments, questions, comments? Very good. I certainly agree with that. I'm gonna go ahead and just read the folks that did do this because I think that's awesome. That's the things that they do to help our animal control, among other things. Senior Center, the donations that come in to make our city great. So we also had, in addition to Kenaitze Indian Tribe, we had Julie Allison, James Carpenter, Mary Newby, Andrea Hanley, Gerda Trent, Shannon Richards, Kayla West, Allison Anderson, which was Care of Credit Union 1, Don Francisco, and Jackie Pierce. Just want to personally thank all of those folks for their donation. Any other comments, questions? Comments? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Baisden?
Yes.
Councilmember Askin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dothit?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted?
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Student Representative Thibodeau?
Yep.
You have 7 yes votes.
Thank you, Madam.
Sorry, ordinance 3339-2023 is enacted.
Thank you. Next up, item D2, accepting and appropriating grants received through Maddie's Fund to the Kenai Animal Shelter for care of animals. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to enact ordinance 3340, 2023.
I'll second it.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 334-2023? 3340-2023. Seeing none, anybody online? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments, council? Again, much appreciated, and I did appreciate the backstory here. This was through the Maddie's Fund. For folks who don't know, that was in our packet and the information and sort of a background on how that was started and who started it. It's actually a fund that started in 1994 that honored a schnauzer, a miniature schnauzer, and the Maddie Fund was started by Dave and Cheryl Duffield, but I think what I really was intrigued with the amount of money that they've given away over the years. It's absolutely amazing. So appreciate the outreach for the grant and thank you for that. See any other comments, please? Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Baisden?
Yes.
Councilmember Askin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dothit?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted?
Yes?
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Student Representative Thibodeau?
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
The 7 yes votes. Ordinance number 3340, 2023 is enacted.
Thank you. Next up, we have ordinance number 3341-2023, accepting and appropriating a donation to the Kenai Senior Center. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to enact ordinance 3341, 2023.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3341-2023? Do we have anybody online?
No.
Okay. With that, we'll bring it back to council. Comments from council. And this is really neat. I appreciate that. And I, could you please introduce Ms. Romaine? Yes, if you would. I know they're here, and I think we should at least get an introduction.
It's my pleasure to introduce Ray and Yenti Verget. They live at Vintage Point Manor and are regulars at the Kenai Senior Center.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thanks, Kathy. Appreciate that. So I just wanted to say thank you on behalf of the council and the city of Kenai. Thank you for that donation. It's very, very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Put it to work.
It's nice to have a city like this. Honest to goodness, I'm really very happy. Sorry.
Thank you. No problem. You know what we're going to do after this? We're going to take a vote, and then we're going to take a pause, and we're going to go have cookies. Somebody can chat with you, okay? With that, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Askin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dothit?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted?
Yes?
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Student Representative Thibodeau?
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Baisden?
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. Ordinance number 3341, 2023 is enacted.
Let's take a 10-minute at ease. Like Kathy said, there's cookies out there, so. Yep, that's it. Yeah, I'm back. Back on the record. Next up, we had item D4, resolution number 2023-24, supporting State of Alaska legislative action, increasing the base student allocation by at least $1,000 to adequately fund and restore student school resources and learning opportunities. Pleasure, Councilor Nexon.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move to adopt Resolution 2023-24.
I'll second that.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to resolution number 2023-24? Assemblymember Cox.
Thank you. Tyson Cox, Soldotna. And first off, I wanted to thank Councilmember Naxted for bringing this forward. Soldotna has already passed one, and I know Homer and Seward are both going to have one come forward at their next meetings. And of course, the Assembly unanimously passed a similar resolution asking for a significant increase in the BSA. To give a little history on it, is there are two bills out right now. There's House Bill 65 that started at $12.50 increase for the BSA per student. That had been changed in their education committee to $680 for this year, and then another $120 for next year, which would be an increase of $800. That was then referred to finance. Right now, they haven't looked at that yet. I believe they did an increase of over $150 million for one-time funding this year. I can't remember the exact number, but it was in that range. And then I believe today they said they withdrew it. And so there's some things going on within the House right before Easter. So I don't know what they have going on quite yet. And then there's also one in the Senate, which is Senate Bill 52, which is at $1,000, and that has come out of their Education Committee and now heading to Finance as well. And so why I want to talk to it a little bit is coming from where I sit and look at it is when we get to that point, we get a lot of people coming in, and we get them coming in because they're upset. And they're upset because what happens is the school district has to come to the Assembly with a balanced budget. This year, what happened is, of course, everybody's heard, is they have managers of the pools, the theaters, athletic directors, and then some funding from sports. And then they also, if you look a little bit further, they've actually increased the student-to-teacher ratio on there too. And so it's not just those. There's also going to be a decrease an increase in the number of students with the teachers. And so why that happens is because the money comes in backwards. They're having to give us a balanced budget. They don't know exactly what they're going to get. And so with this one-time funding, there is no consistency with that, which then typically means that some layoffs happen. And then when those layoffs happen, then after July, it's magically we have some money again because it's all been approved. And then it comes back, and then in August, we're trying to rehire folks. And so I think some of the logic behind that is it will be much harder to rehire teachers in the fall than it might be some of these other positions. And I'm just speaking for myself and thinking that would be the logic behind that. So what I'm saying with the BSA increase, it's not going to change the amount of money all that much that comes out each year. What it will do is make it more consistent for the borough and for the school district to know what's coming out. And why that affects you guys and is important to, is it okay to finish real quick?
Go ahead.
Why that's important to you as a city is because we're all affected by that. Whether you have a student in school or not, we're affected by whether we have good teachers in our schools, because if we're hiring in August, we're probably not getting the same quality of teachers that we would be getting in April. And then also with our pools and things, if that were to have to happen, that affects everyone. That doesn't just affect the borough. It doesn't just affect the school district. It doesn't just affect the state. So I'm just asking that each of you consider this and put this forward so that our legislators, at least our local legislators, know that we need something to happen. And if they're not going to do a BSA increase, fine. But do something that's a little more consistent than one-time money that we can't count on every year. Thank you.
Any questions for Assemblymember Cox? Councilmember Dothan?
And maybe you can clarify, I don't know if it was 100% correct data or not, but I was reading somewhere that they stated that seniors that are graduating this year from the time they started school till now, have only had a $250 increase in the BSA in that rough time frame. Have you heard of that rough figure?
That's in their entire school, I believe that would be pretty close to correct. 2017 was the last significant increase, and that was, please don't quote me, but I think like $50 or $100. And then this year, last year they did put another $30 on this year. So there is a $30 increase from last year to this year. But those numbers are fairly small. To keep up with inflation, we would have to be around the $1,200 to $1,500 mark, and that's not even what's being asked for.
Thank you.
Councilmember Raskin?
Mr. Cox, the $1,000 per student, according to numbers that I've seen, that should be like $130 million, but then they're talking about a $257 million increase. Why is it almost double?
So I'm definitely not the expert on all of it. What I can tell you is $1,000 increase, when they say that, isn't just $1,000. It depends on your area. And why that depends on your area is there are multipliers depending on if you're rural, if you're urban, the amount of special needs that might be in a district. I think there's even the one for if there's no road system to get to your area, those kinds of things. All that's incorporated into that, and that's what gets the final number that then goes out. So it's a harder answer than that because it's not exact to each district. So, and I don't have the exact on what the entirety would be for all of that.
Okay, so then this is considered a one-time?
Oh, right now is. Right now is different. We're not, when I say one-time money, we're not talking about a BSA increase. A BSA increase would be an increase that would stay, that we know we could count on every year. The one-time money, I want to say it's like 165 million, but it's somewhere around there. Okay. And that's not just for us, that's for the state. And so that is one time, meaning this year only. You cannot count on that for next year. It's whatever the legislature would like to do for the next year.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Vice Mayor Basin?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Assemblymember Cox. I know that you've been involved with this in your position for quite a few years. And do you know how this will affect the funding from the borough if this was to take effect? What would our minimum amount be that our funding to the cap would be? How much that would increase from the borough standpoint if this was to take place?
I don't know that number at this time. I do know that what would change is it could change I don't know if it changes the minimum or not. I would have to ask that. I do know it would change the maximum. So when we say funding to the cap, that cap does get raised. With the BSA, there is a percentage that can go up as well. And so it can increase. It doesn't have to because we don't have to choose that.
Well, I guess my question is that, and I don't think most people understand, is that there's a minimum and maximum that the local taxpayers here provide besides sales tax that comes from property tax. And I think it's between 32 million and maybe 52 million. That
54 this year.
54 million. So this would probably increase that 54 million, and we're 90% of the time we give to the max. So there would be an increase here for the local taxpayers. Have you had any conversations with any of our delegation on where this funding would come from? The only place I can see it coming from everybody's permanent fund. Can you see it coming from any other place?
My suggestion is it's going to come from wherever the one-time funding is going to come from because they don't have that either.
Well, it's going to come from the permanent fund. So I guess what I'm saying is
or taxation. They've talked about other taxation.
Well, we do have a member who has put in for a tax increase here locally. I think that's not likely.
Well, 2% sales tax.
I don't think that's likely in this, and I would think the city of Soldotna and the city of Kenai would be opposed to a sales tax. I think that would hurt us.
I think a lot of cities would.
Yeah, I think so. I don't think that's going anywhere. But I guess my final question is I'm trying to figure out. I've got one student still in the school district, and I love our teachers. How this will have a positive effect on the classroom. I have not heard anybody, there's no accountability to this, so just giving more money without any changes that's going to take place at our school district. I haven't, unless I've missed it, I haven't heard any conversation of how it's going to have an effect with our standards and improve that. Our state is pretty much last when it comes to standards. The peninsula, we can always say we're the best, but we're the best of the worst. How are we going to, have you heard any conversations on how it's going to have a positive improvement to the classroom? Because I can't figure that out.
One of the positive improvement pieces is when we get that budget is saying, when they start with the budget and they say, okay, we're going to have to cut, that's the budget that they're saying will be an effective budget to teach our kids appropriately. Right now, we were at a $13 million deficit. So either we teach them appropriately or we have a $13 million deficit, which means now we have less or more kids in each classroom, less personal time with each teacher, those kinds of things. I mean, to me, that's where that comes in at, is they're already telling us what is appropriate to fund that year. Now, we can, as citizens, we should all go to their meetings and ask them those questions. But on the assembly, we have a different job. Our job is to see if we have the availability to fund them to what they're asking for, or don't we? And right now, they don't have the ability to even fund what they believe is appropriate either. So that's where the BSA increase helps. Without the BSA increase in the last 5 years, what's happened is we have not even kept up with inflation. And so without even keeping up with inflation, it's actually shifted a lot of that burden to our local governments, and not just the borough, to everyone, because guess what? Now your kids aren't getting some of their other sports things paid for. I know that's gone down over the years on just those little things, on what gets paid for trips, all those kinds of things. It's all gone away. Why? Because we haven't had an increase in that. So when we don't have an increase, it's actually a decrease every year.
Further question? Student Rep Thibodeau.
Thank you for coming by. I just had a question. I'm a bit confused on everything. So this would be $1,000 per student, correct?
Increase to the BSA.
Okay, yeah, increase to the BSA. I'm just wondering obviously it wouldn't matter to me, I'm graduating, but I wanted to know what that would do if it was accepted for the students, like the juniors all the way to the low, or the like kindergartners. What would that do? Would that pay for certain things, or would it just like give more money to paying for teachers or stuff like that?
It would keep our funding close to what we've seen in the past. Because of inflation and because costs have gone up, we have costs for, like healthcare has gone up significantly, so there's a lot of healthcare costs. Just the cost in maintenance has gone up significantly. So all these costs of just running things, utilities have gone up. Just the costs in running things have all gone up, but the funding we receive has not. So I'm just asking for this to keep us at the status quo.
Councilmember Winger.
Thank you. Just to clarify, so this would be basically an extra $1,000 to cover administrative cost, because when the question was asked what we're going to see in the classroom, you said that it would be good to go and ask those questions. But when you're allocating the funding from the borough, are you going and asking those questions, and how will this directly impact? Because what you just listed off, insurance, utilities, those are all administrative costs of running a facility. So how will that extra $1,000 impact a classroom, specifically materials, what they're going to be getting, that classroom-wise?
Thank you for the question. And remember, I am not a person from the school district, but I can tell you is each school actually has the ability to govern what they spend on their materials and those things. They get a budget each year. They determine what they spend. Now, as far as the difference between somebody's insurance and all those kinds of things, that is a teacher. That's part of what a teacher gets. So if we can't fund that, we have less teachers, right? Because teachers, that's part of having a good quality teacher, is giving them a fair wage, insurance, and then some sort of retirement. If we can't do those things, number one, we won't get anybody. But number two is we have to minimize the people there so that we can give it to the ones that are working. So essentially what it ends up being is less teachers.
Further questions? Councilmember Dolphin.
Yes, I think this is just showing the encouragement we want to go. We're not going to be in charge of saying, yep, the city of Kenai said we want to give them $1,000. That's not where we're at. We're just here to show encouragement that we'd like to see some more funding going to our schools. And I see no harm in saying, yes, as a city, we think we want to fund schools with more money. Everything has gone up. By saying that we only want it to go to one section, well, personally, I'd love to have my kids have a warm classroom that doesn't leak on their roof and have multiple teachers and not have 30 or 40 kids to a class.
Just a point of order, Councilmember Dodd, we're going to debate this here in a minute,
Okay.
but would you have a question for?
I guess it was kind of a little bit of a rebuttal to the pointed questions that were coming in on him. And I agree with what you're coming from, and that it is a good idea that we fund our schools at a higher rate than what's been.
Further questions of Assemblymember Cox? Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for considering this tonight.
Is there anybody else from the general public that'd like to speak to resolution number 2023-24? Nobody else in chamber or online? With that, we'll bring it back to council, and I'll open with Councilmember Naxted, the sponsor.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. And I was watching the Borough Assembly and the City of Soldotna. They passed similar resolutions, requesting increased funding, and I thought it was timely for us to consider this as well. Reading the first whereas, the state of Alaska is constitutionally obligated to establish and maintain a system of public schools. And I understand through the borough ordinance that the borough right now is facing a $13.1 million deficit, and that they and all other school districts haven't had a meaningful increase since 2017. And that the deficit could cause for elimination or reduction in art, in theater, music, foreign language, vocational, all of those things that they cut off, all those things that I think are very important to have in a school. Very important. They're, they certainly were for me when I was there. And there are there's a Senate bill and a House bill that was mentioned in the amounts going forward. So it's encouragement for both sides to consider an increase. And I think that that's really the spiel, but really what this does, we're not the decision makers in this at all. All we're doing is saying, hey, House and Senate, legislature, we think that there ought to be an increase. Where the money comes from is up to them, if there is any. If there isn't, then I guess there isn't. But it's just encouragement for our kids here, and for our education, and for our staff too, the teachers, all the way down to the janitor. And so as far as how the money is being spent, and I think that's something we heard here, this has really nothing to do with that. And I think that if anybody listening or in this room is concerned about that, really ought to probably go to a school board meeting, go talk to the assembly, and voice your concern about how the money is spent. This resolution has nothing to do with how the money is spent, and really we don't have any decision on how much is coming. So it's just nothing has really changed as far as what the state has provided our school district, and it's a request for that to have an increase, and that's really it in a nutshell. So I would request your support on this.
Vice Mayor Basin.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate Councilmember Naxted bringing this forward, and listen to Assemblymember Cox. My issue, and I'm not going to support this, is have a few issues. Back last year, we passed a bond here at the borough level. The school district knew they had a $13 million deficit, and that was never discussed when that bond package passed. It only come out after the bond passed. A lot of administration buildings were being built. That's not going to affect our children. Their cuts or cutting, what they're doing right now is the scare tactics of cutting the pools and that type of stuff. You don't hear anything about administration cuts. And then let's talk about the state. The state doesn't have a physical plan to fund this. They don't have millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars to fund this, unless they're going to come and take your permanent fund. And if I'm okay if that's what they want to do, but none of them will be honest and upfront that said this is what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to take 25%, 50%, 75% of your permanent fund to fund this. This is not magic. They're also talking about defined benefits up there at the state right now. They don't have this money to do this. It's not there. So they're going to have to spend either out of the Constitutional Budget Reserve or the PFD, and they just tried to pass an amendment to do temporary money for the school district. And I hope they come up with a solution, but it needs to be a long-term solution, and that's why I'm not going to support this. City of Kenai doesn't need to be involved with this right now.
Councilmember Winger?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Thank you, Mr. Nexted, for bringing this forward, and Mr. Cox for coming and speaking to this. I, too, will not be supportive of this. This does directly affect my family. My son's a competitive swimmer. We would be directly impacted. We could be looking at ultimately absorbing the cost to have a pool supervisor so that we could continue our program. That would be an extra couple of $1,000s per family on top of what we're already paying if we were to absorb these so that we could have the program. And that is something as a parent we are willing to do so that our kid is able to still swim competitively. I too have concerns when we're talking about this, as Mr. Bazin stated, with the bond package, as well as we got tens of millions of dollars in COVID funds to our school district. Where did it go? I can tell you, we didn't see it in our classrooms. They got funded for my kids that were homeschooled that year that were not in the school district, but they still got funded for having my children in their school district. So it leaves for me a lot of question of spending, and it's an accountability of spending. I don't think this is a lack of not getting enough money. It's an accountability of budgeting, spending. Like Mr. Basin said with the bond package, this wasn't within the front process. We got tens of millions of dollars in COVID funds. Didn't see it in the classroom. Classroom sizes, they talk about maybe getting larger. They're already 24 to 28 students. We could easily absorb another 4 or 5 students. You'll hear a lot of teachers say from 24 to 28. There's not much of a difference. They don't have aides in those classrooms. It's multiple teachers helping each other in classrooms and parent volunteers. So without continuing to go on, I will not be in support of this.
Further discussion? Councilmember Sonart.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I actually have a question for Assembly Member Mr. Cox, if that's okay.
Yeah, I'll allow that. And just a reminder that as he said, although he's with the Assembly and has some insight, he's not a school board member, which would.
Okay, well, I'll
go
put
ahead,
my
yeah.
question out to everyone, and you guys can fill me in. So one of the issues with funding, Mr. Cox spoke to, and that is we are held until July until the legislature votes on the budget, and then we're hiring in August. That's been standard operating procedure for the 26 years I was with KPBSD. And there was talk every year about forward funding. Now, if this SB 52 bill goes through with this $1,000 BSA increase, how does that affect forward funding? Because in my mind, we're still waiting for July for the legislature to finalize the budget and vote. Even though it's $1,000 larger, we're still waiting until July. We're still hiring in August. How would this fix the issue that we need to forward fund? That's my question. And if this doesn't address forward funding, then I'm here to say it's not addressing the real issue, because we need to be forward funded.
If you'd like to comment, Senator Cox, I just wanted to get the context of the question first. So.
And just for clarity, in the bond package where the administration is going to go, there's going to be 2 schools in there as well. And then to answer your question, is right now the way that they figure out this budget is with the existing BSA. So they take the existing BSA, run that through the equation with the student count that they took in October, and that's how they know. So if there's $1,000 more to that, then they know using that $1,000. It is not the same as forward funding, which would be even better. But what it does is it gives consistency, and they know how much they have. And if the state ever added to that, that's fine. But then they know how much they have each year with that amount. That's how they're doing it now. It's just on a lower BSA. Does that answer your question?
Councilmember Saunders?
Mayor Gabriel, thank you. So this actually does not address forward funding, because they're still looking at the numbers in October, and they know that right now they're getting $59.60 per student, and that's what they're calculating on, that's what they're working on. If this were to pass, then they would be working $69.60 per student, but is still not forward funding, if I'm understanding you correctly.
It is not forward funding, but when that gets put in like that by the state, that is money that they have to end up giving. So in essence, that's guaranteed at that amount.
Sorry if I could. It's the one-time fundings that are the difficult thing now. Like they're talking about the 150 million. We're going to give you that one time, you get this. And we don't know what that's going to be next year. The BSA is already calculated. It's that one time that they're talking they don't know about. And that's what they're wanting to eliminate by allowing the BSA to be a calculated set fund. It's the one time, okay, we're going to give you 150 million on top of your BSA. That's what we're trying to avoid by doing this, is to increase the BSA so they can say, they don't have to say they're going to lay off X number of students per year, because they don't know what their next one-time funding is going to be.
Yeah. Lay off teachers, right, not students? We're not laying, okay.
Not funding, I guess you could lay off students too.
Yeah. Further comments, Vice Mayor Bazin?
Thank you, Mayor. So to also help answer the question dealing with funding, there's two sources. You've got the state, which basically provides 2/3 of the funding. The borough provides 1/3 of the funding. The state forward funding, the issue is just like us. We can't forward fund here because we also have the issue of elections and having the next pot of money that we have to deal with. The state has the same issue that they're dealing with when it comes to the legality of it. And then put the complexity of it here is that if this borough doesn't have the money, if Assemblymember Cox and his group does not have the money, whenever they start to put their budget forward, or the mayor puts the budget forward, you may have an instance to where the mayor funds it to the minimum to begin with because they don't have the money there to fund it. And that also has a negative effect on the teachers. So you've got two groups here that deal with it. It's complex. It's not a good system that we're dealing with. I don't think that part of it gets solved because it's the way the political part of it is set up. It puts the school district in a bind every year based on whether they can get funding from the state and also from our local government based on whether we have the tax revenue.
Councilmember Naxton?
Thank you, Mayor. I do appreciate everybody's opinions and the discussion here. But I kind of refer back to the resolution that's really before you, and it doesn't speak to where the money's coming from, how it will be divvied out, any of that, or the budget of our borough, and any of that. And again, that is other folks' decision on how that works. And certainly, again, if anyone here wants to have an effect on that, you can go to a school board meeting and further that. But what this simply is asking for is an increase to the base student allocation, and it's for others to decide what that's going to be, if it's going to be anything. And if there's any and it comes here, then I suggest that those that are adamant about it or have opinions should voice those and go forward. This is simply a request to increase the base student allocation.
Councilmember Sonart?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Councilmember Naxted, I appreciate your comments and the direction of speaking to our assembly and speaking to our school board are steps that all of us need to take. Because most of us, if we don't have children, maybe we have grandchildren in the system. And even so, the schools are the bedrock of our community. I did some quick research the last couple of days for this, and I found several things. I got my research off the Department of Education, U.S. Department of Education. State of Alaska roughly has 128,238 students, which means if you take the SB 52 bill literally, then it would be, our state budget would be increasing by approximately 130 million each year. And yet, there's a legislative finance memo out that says our state budget will increase 250 million each year, almost double, almost 2,000 per student. In order to get the 1,000, you got to spend 2,000, if I'm reading this correctly. Another website, which comes from the World Population Review, and their source was the U.S. education spending statistics. This one was very interesting. They listed all 50 states in order of spending per pupil. And this was based on 3-4 years ago. Alaska came in as number 5. It was in the top 10 states of highest per pupil spending. Alaska was $17,726 per student. So I went back to their source, which was the U.S. Education Spending Statistics, and they had updated it last June of 2022. Alaska had moved down to 9th place, but our overall spending per pupil had gone up to $18,392. I don't know, it seems to me like Alaska is spending appropriately, although inflation does need to take place, and I guess we do need to get more active, as Councilmember Naxted said, talking to our assemblies and to our school boards, because in the 34 years I spent as a public school educator, I heard this every single year. At the end of the end of the year in service, we had this same conversation every year. And we'd hold our breath and we would wait for July to come, and I would read the newspaper, and then it was like, okay, the legislature passed it, we get our funding. Whew, okay. I can only remember in 26 years it affecting my classroom 2 times. I got a smart board in 2010 when everybody else got a smart board. And I finally, after 25 years, ended up with a concert tuba. To be honest, it did not affect my classroom, whether or not this money was. I don't know where it's going. But to also talk to the idea that when they put out there, well, if we don't pass this, the first things to go are the pool, the theaters, the art, and the music. I'm here to tell you that the principal runs the school. Those decisions stop and start with the principal. The principal can use whatever staff allocation he has to create, or she has to create the staff that they want. If a principal wants to have 2 music teachers, they can do it at the expense of something else, obviously. But it's, at the end of the day, it is the principal's choice as to how they're going to staff their school, and that depends on their demography, their constituents, what their community feels is important. So to make a blanket statement, like if this doesn't pass, the theaters, the pools, art, music, you're going to lose it all. I hear that every year, and it's not true. I've never seen that happen. Have I seen certain individual programs shut down at certain schools? Yes, I have, but that was the principal's decision. And, but I've also seen those programs come back, too. So, I don't know, I'm really torn on this, because I don't think that, I don't think Alaska has set itself up for the next generation to attract and retain the brighter younger teachers that are coming out and going into the profession. That is a concern. I would like to see the funding stabilized. But here again, where is this funding coming from? It has to come from someplace. Like Councilmember Baisden said, if they want to take our PFD and forward fund the schools, or fund it because they can spend it more, they can spend it better than we can, then just tell us that. But I still haven't heard anything here tonight that would totally change my mind. And I'm all for schools. I want our schools to have the best teachers possible, and that is a concern. And as Councilmember Naxted said, we need to voice our concerns to the Assembly and to the school board. But here again, according to World Population Review, right now, we're 9th in the country at over $18,000 a student. So I'm not exactly sure. I mean, you can play around with statistics and get any result you want, but, so there you go.
Councilmember Dawson?
I guess just a real quick on that ninth statistics you pulled up there, $18,000. I just like to remind everybody that our numbers are greatly skewed for who actually gets that funding due to rural and bush Alaska. If we're 9th in the country for funding our students, when you look at a school and what it costs to run in Bethel or Nome, that's alarming. That's atrocious. That means realistically, I bet you we're like 30th or 40th when we look at the funding available for here. Those are total random numbers, but the base number on those statistics is totally skewed when you look at the cost it costs off the road system to fund and yeah, it's crazy expensive out there. They're running diesel generators 24/7. All those costs are extremely high. So to be 9th compared to, I don't even know what's 7th or 8th, I guarantee almost all their students are on road systems, and their cost to run their schools are pennies compared to ours. So for us to be 9th, that's alarming. You want good students, you have good teachers. You want good teachers, you pay more. I want good employees, I raise my pay. We're all trying to do that. Look at the city right now. How are we trying to encourage new applications? We're raising our pay. Well, how can we raise our pay if we don't ever have a budget to raise it? We want good people, we might have to pay more. Otherwise, we're going to lose them to places that can pay the same or more, and the cost of living is way lower. So I think it's a no-brainer to say, yeah, we want to see our students have money given to them for their education until we can better this. If we don't ever say we want to have money, and quite honestly, the government wastes money on stuff way less important than our students and our schools. And this is just saying, yeah, I want to see our schools and students funded, and I want to see it improved so we can have better teachers, maybe have improvements in our different programs, and stop seeing the cuts. And if that means that, oh, well, we had to cut something else in the budget somewhere else, that's the state's decision. And if we don't have it, well, you know what? Maybe we do need to look at the permanent fund. I don't know. Or show us at a tax. Find the money to show our priorities, which is our future, which is our students. And this is just saying that, hey, I'm for it. And if we say we're against it as a community, I think that's crazy. But it is what the vote comes to. And that right there, being 9th, is alarming to me. So that's where I'm at on it.
Councilmember Weir?
Thank you. Just to add into it, I think to what would be the most alarming for me is that we're the 9th right now for funding, but we're in like 45th for education for testing. So we're in the top for funding, but yet our students are in the bottom half when it comes to the test scores. So we're funding to the 9th, but yet we're at the bottom when it comes to testing. And we can state that that's brought down by bush villages or anything among the fact. In the end, I think this isn't so much a money issue as it is a spending issue. And we've got to start driving those results in our classrooms and holding administration accountable for those results in our classrooms.
Councilmember Naxted.
Yeah, just kind of want to add to that. It's kind of a revolving thing. Is it takes money to have assets for the students so that they can learn if they choose to. And my daughters got out of the high school about a decade ago, and it was probably much the same concerns then as far as test scores and whatnot. But I tell you what, this really doesn't have anything to do with the resolution. But that's what we're talking about. But the thing is those girls could find the teachers and get their education, and they did really well, and they've gone off to do very well in universities on from the education that was available here, regardless of what the average test scores are. There's teachers and education that's very good here and available. And personally, it sounds like we're talking and we're on the school board, but I'm going to say that, you know, a lot of that has to do with, it could be the students, but it could be their parents and encouragement and providing that. But the school needs to have the tools in which to allow the students that want to learn can learn. And so I'm just requesting through this that the legislature look at funding at a higher level. They get to decide where the money comes from if they can. That's up to them. It's not up to us. And then if there's any money that comes here, again, I'm repeating myself, that's beyond city council. That has nothing to do with us. But the children in the city of Kenai and the families and the schools that are here do, and they should be our concern. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Vice Mayor Basin.
I'd make a motion to table Resolution 2020-23 and ask for unanimous.
I was actually gonna,
I'll second.
Sorry.
Can we just clarify the motion to table indefinitely?
It would be to table indefinitely.
I'll second.
I just wanted to, I was just hoping you'd wait on that, because we're now, I was trying to read the tea leaves here, and I agree, I think I know where you're trying to go with this, but, yeah, I just to weigh in and to where I'm at on this, I'm a yes vote on this, simply for the reason I think we have to, what I imagine this goes to when it gets to the legislature and how they're going to handle this. It's I don't know if that $1,000 is where they settle at or not. It might be presumably less than that. But I think what, from my perspective, is having a vote of confidence in our children here. This is what this is all about. We're not allocating funds here. We're not the ones that are making the decisions. And believe me, I appreciate the conversation here. I really do. But I think moving forward, I really dialed in on Councilmember Sonart's comments about retention and recruitment of good teachers, of that simple act of saying, yes, we do believe and we want you to be here. It's tough doing that. And to have the signaling, if you will, to prospective teachers, good teachers, to come up here and compete for those jobs, I think it's important. Like I said, as it goes through the legislative process, that will be out of our control. I hope they make the decision at least to move this, positively. Whether it'll be $1,000 or not, I don't know. But I think from what we're trying to accomplish here, from my perspective, is just that signaling that, hey, we want to have good teachers and we want to have retention of our teachers for our children. My children are grown. I've got grandchildren in school now, and I would like to see them have the education opportunities that I had. We can talk about test scores, and I agree 100% with, performance, and that's a conversation I think you have with the school board and curriculum. I know there's factors, there's challenges within that state that may bring down those, the overall test scores, how we compare nationally. But I will say, I had a good education in this school district, and our children had a good education that led to a good foundational base to move on through college and successful careers. So with that, I understand where you're going, Vice Mayor Basin, and I don't think it'd be appropriate to vote it down, but maybe there's a strategy, and I can't pull the count. I don't know where we're at. I think it's pretty close right now, and if we could cross that bridge after the vote, I guess, is maybe through a reconsideration. Councilmember Dothett.
I know it was asked for unanimous consent. I don't agree with that. I think it should go to a vote, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to vote on this. So I was just speaking to Vice Mayor Basin's strategy there. Any further comment? Clerk, please call the roll.
This is on the motion to table indefinitely. Councilmember Dothett?
No.
Councilmember Naxted?
No.
Councilmember Sonart?
No.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel?
No.
Vice Mayor Baisden?
Yes.
Councilmember Askin?
Yes.
You have 3 yes votes, 4 no votes. The motion has failed.
Further discussion on the main motion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Naxted,
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart,
No.
Councilmember Winger,
No.
Student Representative Thibodeau,
We'll go with a yes.
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Baisden,
No.
Councilmember Askin,
No.
Councilmember Dothett.
Yes, in support of Gould.
I'm sorry. Oh. 3 yes votes, 4 no votes. Resolution 2023-24 has failed.
Let's take at ease. Back on the record. Vice Mayor Basin.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to reconsider resolution number 2023-2024.
I'll second.
Discussion on the motion. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sonart?
Can we, point of order, can we know what we're voting on right now?
Certainly. So the motion to reconsider would bring the resolution 2023-24 back before the council.
I'm sorry, Shelley, could you say that again, please?
So voting on the motion to reconsider, if approved, would bring resolution 2023-24 back before the council for further debate.
Discussion on the motion.
Yes.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Student Representative Thibodeau?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Baisden?
Yes.
Councilmember Askin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dothit?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted?
Yes.
You have 7 yes votes. That motion is approved.
Thank you, Councilmember Basin, or Vice Mayor Basin, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to table resolution 2023-24 indefinitely. Ask for unanimous.
I'll second.
Discussion on the motion.
Are we discussing the motion to table or to this
Yeah.
resolution originally?
The motion to table indefinitely.
Can we get,
I need to take the gavel.
Hold on, just can I clarify? Because this motion on this particular resolution has already failed this evening, the motion needs to be reconsidering the motion to table, and it has to be made by somebody who voted on the prevailing side. So somebody who voted no on the motion to table indefinitely needs to make that motion to table indefinitely this time. Reconsider the motion to table indefinitely.
I'd like to pass the gavel this time and ask to be recognized. Vice Mayor Basin.
Mayor Gabriel, you recognized.
Thank you. At this time, I'd like to make a motion to reconsider the motion to postpone indefinitely.
I'll second.
Discussion. I'd ask for unanimous.
I do have a discussion on this item. I'd like some explanation on why we wanted to postpone it indefinitely and not reconsider or vote on it.
Basically what this is, it's a signaling thing. We voted on it, it didn't pass. So instead of this perception, I guess, that we don't support education, which might be viewed as that would be what we're trying to do here as a body.
I guess it might be not the place for this. Could we entertain a amendment to the resolution in the wording?
No. This will be voted unanimously, or it'll be voted for as it stands right now.
And help me out, Mr. Bloom, if I don't have this right, but the motion on the floor is to reconsider the motion to postpone indefinitely. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And unanimous was asked for. Is there opposition?
Yes.
Clerk, take the vote.
Councilmember Winger? Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Student Representative Thibodeau?
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Baisden?
Yes.
Councilmember Askin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dothit?
No.
Councilmember Naxted?
No.
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
You have 5 yes votes and 2 no votes. That motion passes, which brings the motion to table back, indefinitely back in front of the council. This was the motion to reconsider that motion. Now we need to take that motion back up.
So I have the gavel back.
Thank you.
And would ask, so where we're at is to reconsider the motion. Do we have to remake the motion too? Yeah.
No, the reconsideration brought
So
the
we're
same.
back to square one on that. So Councilmember, or Vice Mayor Basin.
Thank you. So I need to bring back the motion to table resolution. I would like to bring back the motion to table resolution number 2023-24.
I'll second.
I'd ask for unanimous.
Is that the time certain, Councilmember or Vice Mayor Basin, postponed till, or table indefinitely rather?
Sorry, I would ask to table indefinitely.
I'll second.
Discussion on the motion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Baisden?
Yes.
Councilmember Askin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dothett?
No.
Councilmember Naxted?
No?
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Student Representative Thibodeau?
No.
You have 5 yes votes and 2 no votes. The motion to table indefinitely, it passes.
Council, we're now on item D5, resolution number 2023-25, authorizing a construction contract and corresponding purchase order for the 2023 Kenai Recreation Center upgrades project and an increase to the existing design services purchase order for construction administration services. Pleasure, Council. Councilmember Raskin.
I move that we approve resolution 2023-25.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to resolution number 2023-25?
There are no hands raised.
Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments from council? Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Can we have Mr. Eubank give us an overview on this, just kind of on the project and the finances?
Mr. Eubank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Winger. So this is kind of the culmination of the project to this point. Over time, council's appropriated council's appropriated $1,625,873 towards this project. The design is complete. We've went out to the market. We had 2 responsive bidders to do the construction work on this project. Orion Construction and Blasey Construction. Orion Construction was a low bidder at $1,425,700, which is consistent or in line with our engineer's estimates. This project will replace the roof and do other modifications to the roof of the rec center, and also we'll replace mechanical systems in there to include 6, I believe, rooftop units. I would like to be clear, this project is not going to do any work within the existing inside of the building, things like that, but this is going to address the roof and some mechanical. This is a project we've been designing for a year and a half now, and this would result in construction likely starting this summer and hopefully be, especially on the roof, be completed this summer. Hope that answers questions.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Vice Mayor Basin.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I did have a brief conversation with the city manager. Some of the comments that I've had, I know we've had discussions up here before. It's a big number that we're putting on a building that's aging and needs work. And my comments to the city manager was, have we ever had anything in position to where when this body is spending millions of dollars on a project like this, that we go out to the voters for, either a bond question or a question on whether they want to see money spent on this aging facility or a new facility. And I think it's something we may need to discuss in the future, because this building, it seems like we're putting a lot of money into it, and it's starting to catch people's eyes on the amount. And I'm for the rec center. I think it does great things for our community, but it is an aging building, and maybe it's time that we start looking at other things that we need to do besides put more money into this. So just a comment.
Councilmember Dothett.
I concur with Mr. Bazin on that. It's a big number. There's a ton of stuff, from what I understand, needs to be done on the inside. And I think this kind of, so to speak, plugs a sinking ship and buys us some more time to decide what to do with the building before it moves forward with more funding besides above and beyond what we've already allocated for this. I'd really like to see some more research done on, utilization numbers and what it's costing the city just to maintain it as is. And I agree with possibly sending it some kind of a vote or some kind of something to get the public's opinion. And if the public can see that we need to spend more millions of dollars and they're okay with it to save the building, then that would be great. But I'd like to see some more public input before we spend the immense amount of money that looks like it's probably going to be needed done in the inside of this building. Hopefully this preserves the building enough to where it makes it still have a financial use. And I just would like to see that before we spend any more above and beyond this, that we do some more research on it.
Councilman Winger.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I'll be in support of this, but agree with Vice Mayor Bazin and Councilmember Dothett on further expenses that we'd be looking at, possibly in the millions, bringing forth in front of the voters. I think when we're looking at projects that start going up into the millions, as for all the reasons they listed, I think at this point we need to hear the buy-in from the public when it comes to this facility and some of our other aging facilities. So I will be supporting this. I wouldn't be supporting a future allocation at this point of funds without going to the voters for direction on that.
Councilman Axtell.
Thank you. I wouldn't be necessarily in favor of going out to the voters with the information that we have right now. I think that would be, it may be appropriate, but I do support this building, and we do have use numbers for this, and it's upward of 52,000 individuals a year utilize it. It's slightly less than the library, slightly more. I think it's slightly less. So it's in harmony with that. It's we also know that it's insured for $5 million. I don't think we can replace it for that. But in harmony with what you guys are saying, I concur, and I think that our public works director could provide this, would be, what a replacement cost of a building would be, if it would be in the same place or not, a number. Also, I don't know about the bones of the building, if it's solid in there or not, and then we have cosmetic things and some other things if there's not structural to do, if that's the case, and if it's worth going in there and putting more money on the inside. And I think that that's definitely a council decision. $1 million doesn't buy what it used to. It's really not that much money in a large project. It just is not. And so that's a lot of the reason why we were elected here to make some of these decisions. If it goes beyond that, if we're talking replacing the building, I would definitely agree. Perhaps we would go to the public at that point. But funding future projects, I think, is a definite possibility. But I think that we can be provided with some numbers and some guidance to direct us through that, because I don't think anybody sitting up here really knows what the bones of that building are. Thank you.
Further comment, Vice Mayor Bazin?
I would ask for unanimous.
Very good. I just have one quick question. I'm a yes vote on here, but could you lay out just what the additive alternates were, Mr. Eubank?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Fortunately, we have our Public Works Director here, Mr. Curtin.
Mr. Curtin.
Thank you, through the mayor, through the city manager. So what I did, I was a little nervous when we bid this on where the numbers were going to come in with the market. So I pulled several components out and placed them in as additive alternates. They're specific to rooftop HVAC units. So those were kind of very clean individual pieces of work that we can unplug or plug in as funding without overly impacting the project. So I just did that to give us some options on our ability to award depending on where the numbers came in. Fortunately, with the funds that we have available, we are going to be able to replace all of those. So we are getting a complete new flat roof system on the building. We are not doing the existing metal roof. There's a few small pieces of metal roof that's not as old as the others. That is remaining. But the whole rest of the building that has a flat roof is all getting a brand new roof. And then 6 of the rooftop, which is virtually all the rooftop units, are going to be replaced with brand new equipment.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2023-25 is adopted. That brings us to item G7, action approval, granting an easement on both sides of Boat Launch Road to the Alaska Department of Transportation in support of the Bridge Access Road Pavement Preservation Project. Councilmember Nexon.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that we issue a temporary construction easement to ADOT in support of the Bridge Access Road Pavement Preservation Act project. Request unanimous consent.
I'll second that.
Discussion. Unanimous consent was requested. I just have one question of administration, and I already know the answer to this. I just want to make clear that we're not going to be doing this during the DevNet season, are we?
What?
Mr. Eubank?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think at this time, the state's still in the design phase for this project, and I don't know their actual construction schedule, but we certainly will voice our concern and our insistence that it not in the future.
Thank you. Councilmember Dothett?
I'm sure that the state will consider that, as I know they did when they were doing that other project on the Kenai Spur. They pretty much shut down or limited construction during the DevNet season because they knew of increased traffic even on the Kenai Spur when they were doing that. I know the contractor on that was disgruntled, busy, had to shut down for a couple weeks, but I think it was a wise choice.
Councilmember Nexon?
I was curious if we know if this culvert, if it's a fish stream, an animal stream.
Mr. Eubank?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I do know the intent of the project is to replace the existing culvert with a fish-friendly passage culvert. So it does, I think, provide habitat for juvenile salmon.
And the construction of such a culvert would most likely, well, by permitting, would not be allowed to happen during most of the summer period too. Perhaps the Public Works Director could provide that window.
Mr. Curtin?
Thank you, through the mayor, City Manager Eubanks. Yes, my understanding, DOT is coordinating with other agencies, the River Center, in Fish and Game, on speccing out the correct materials. This isn't the only location that they're doing this. They're doing this in other parts of the state and the peninsula. So yeah, they're trying to comply with all agencies. It will be a fish passage culvert, and it will have restrictions on times that they're allowed to work in the area.
Thank you for the discussion. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the action to grant an easement on both sides of Boat Launch Road to the Alaska Department of Transportation in support of Bridge Access Road Pavement Preservation Project is approved. That brings us to the next discussion action item, which is the scheduling of a budget work session. I think Mr. Eubank had a comment regarding this. Mr. Eubank?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would ask to postpone discussion and establishment of the work session. It's the administration's intent at this time to provide the manager's draft budget for council consideration at the next meeting, and we will be asking at that time to schedule the work session. So we're brought Mr. Simmons on to help us get through that process, but I want to make sure we get that draft to you, and then we set that work session if that works for council.
So this would be on our next agenda as a discussion item, Mr. Eubank. Councilmember Weyer.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So if you're bringing that forward at the next council, or when are you realistically wanting us to do a work session in May or?
Mr. Eubank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would think that work session would take place sometime there between, the 19th and probably the first meeting in May. We do need to introduce the budget at the second meeting in May for adoption at the first meeting in June. So, sometime to allow some work on the budget and amendments that come out of that work session to be processed in order to introduce at the second meeting in May.
Councilman Ware.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I am out of town every Friday, Saturday until the second weekend of May, so I won't be back in town until May 8th, but I would be happy to, I have very limited service in the Menard Center, but I would be happy to try to get something to you guys if you wanted to do it on a Saturday before I'm available.
Thank you. And actually, we do, so we do take usually it's a full day on a Saturday to go over this because it's quite extensive and it just seems to work better to just, generally we have the department heads here that present their budgets. There's a good chance for us to interact with them during that time. So just for folks that, I appreciate that, Councilmember Winger, but for folks that are new to the process, then just, that's probably what we're going to be looking at is a Saturday sometime after that. Councilmember Dothett.
So just looking at this, Mother's Day weekend probably would not be the best for that. So we're looking at like the 22nd, the 6th, or the 13th. Are those 3 dates that we would be looking at if we did a Saturday after that meeting, correct?
I could definitely do that Saturday, the 13th. I know administratively that would be cutting it kind of close, but I do have a document that I would like to introduce at budget time as well.
Yeah, and just for the record, I am unavailable that weekend, the 13th, yes. And what were the other days? When would you need to have this by? So
I was just saying that if we don't do it on Mother's Day weekend, which would be probably wise, the 22nd of April would be after the 19th, and then the 6th are kind of getting it down there. If we don't do it on the 13th, because the next one's the 20th, and that's after that meeting of May, correct?
So it looks like we're like the 26th and 29th. Is that what I'm getting? Or 22nd and 29th?
22nd, 29th, or the 6th. The 29th is Mother's Day weekend.
No, the 13th is Mother's Day weekend.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, you're right. My bad. So yeah, 22nd, 29th, or the 6th are the 3 dates right now.
Councilmember Askin.
I'm unavailable the 1st through the 17th. I'll be out of state. I can zoom in, but
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel, if the 22nd is a date being considered, making that decision on the 19th wouldn't give enough noticing requirement, so that decision would need to be made sooner than the 19th.
Like today.
so would the 29th be acceptable?
That's what I was wondering. We're now down to like the 29th or 22nd. How does the 29th?
29th works for me.
Nodding of heads. And I know I don't know if anything works for you, Ms. Winger, as far as that goes, but if you're able to zoom in, or at least for part of it, I mean, we can, it's a long day, I know that, but we could probably figure out a time for you if you're proposing an amendment. We can't take action at this meeting anyway, it's just a budget work session, so.
I would be proposing an amendment, and I'd be happy to get with administration ahead of that. Since it's not anything we'd be taking an official vote on, to be honest, like I said, I'm in the Menard Center, but my kids wrestle from 9 a.m. when the first whistle goes, double bracketed. So I will be consistently mat side until almost 1 o'clock that day, but I'd be happy to call in after that.
Yeah, and generally we go till 5 or so is about the time we wrap up. We usually start at 9, and if we're lucky, we get out of here about 5, and that's with a sort of a working lunch in there also. I should ask if Larry's available. Thank you. Okay, so how about if we plug in the 29th? Okay, 9 a.m., council chambers. That'll give everybody a chance to review the budget. And then next up, we have the scheduling council employee evaluations. We do have, and I don't know if everybody has gotten theirs in yet, their evaluations. We're doing 2, our city attorney and city clerk at this round. I think this is something we could probably accomplish in at one time. So we would be looking at probably the last, pull my calendar out here. I would suggest sometime after, like around the last week of April.
We haven't been sent evaluations yet, have we?
Yes.
We have?
They've been sent out, I think, a couple weeks ago. I've gotten one back. I've gotten Councilmember Askins back. You haven't gotten them?
I get a lot of junk mail from you, Mayor Gabriel, so
Well,
no,
this actually
between all
came-
that, I have probably not received
This
it.
actually came, yeah, sorry about that. That's not me, by the way. But this actually came from our new HR director, Stephanie Randall.
Yeah,
Those
it
were
was a couple weeks ago. I got an email. I haven't done anything with it though, so I wasn't sure where we were doing on that.
Yeah, so what I like to do is have everybody, fill those out, and you can send them back to Ms. Randall. But there's 2 employees. The forms are they're pretty self-explanatory. And then once we get those back to Ms. Randall, they'll be compiled, notes added to those, and then we'll have give those to our city employees so they have a chance to review them. And then what I was hoping to do is before our next meeting, which is the 19th, is schedule a possible executive session, if necessary, to meet with the employees.
Mayor
We-
Gabriel, they actually came from Christine Cunningham.
Oh, maybe, they may have been Christine, yeah, it was either one or the other. I couldn't remember which. And I think Miss Cunningham is helping out Miss Randall due to her being her first time through this, and she was the previous HR director. So it probably did come from.
On that, is this something we can do in an evening, or do we have
Yes.
to get a whole day? Okay.
This would be done in the evening.
Mondays and Fridays are the worst for me for evening stuff, so anytime during the week, I can probably make it work.
I'm unavailable on Fridays, out of town.
How about Thursday, the 27th?
We're looking at April, correct?
Yes. And then we'll have to set up the executive session, possible executive session for May 3rd. Okay,
Mayor, so Thursday, the 27th?
yeah.
What time?
6 p.m. work? Okay.
So you're gonna meet on the 27th, but not meet with us until the 3rd?
What we would do is we would we would sit down and do the evaluations on the 27th, give them to the employees, and then schedule the executive session on the 3rd.
Sorry, wouldn't the meeting of the 27th, when we go over the evaluations, be an executive session as well?
Well, possibly, yes.
Yeah, so the 27th would have to be a special meeting with the executive session possibility for council discussion on the evaluation is, I think, the plan. And then the employee participation part of that would happen on the 3rd.
Okay.
Right, so the point was that we would generate the evaluations, give them to the employees, give you a chance to review them, and then meet on the executive session on the 3rd for your feedback. Although I would suggest that we do put in there possibly for the 27th in executive session, just in case we had the desire to. Can we do that? Just
Yes, we can set the agenda language up for those options in executive session.
very good. Thank you. So 27th at 6 p.m. and then executive session on the 3rd. All right.
Mayor Gabriel.
Oh, I'm sorry.
On the 3rd meeting, I am out of town for state wrestling, so I will be telephonically participating at that meeting and would have to do our evaluations telephonically as well.
Okay. Other than that, does that time work for everybody else? Okay, thank you. Oh, Vice
No,
Mayor
thank
Mason.
you, Mayor. So on the 3rd, we're going to do that before the council meeting? Am I looking at this right? Do we have a council?
That'll be the night of the council meeting.
After?
After, yeah, executive session. So with that, we'll move to commission committee reports. Council on Council on Aging.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Council on Aging will be meeting next Thursday, the 13th, at 3:00 p.m. in the afternoon at the Kenai Senior Center.
Thank you, Councilmember Sonard. Airport Commission.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. On the 3rd of March, we had a regular meeting where we reviewed policies presented by the council and recommended approval of all of those back to the council. On 3/16, we had a work session regarding landscaping at the airport, and our next meeting is the 13th of April.
Thank you, Harbor Commission.
We haven't had an official meeting in a couple of times here, but we do have one scheduled on the 10th. So we'll get something done on the 10th.
Very good. Parks and Recreation Commission.
Thank you. No report on Parks and Rec. They did cancel their meeting for tomorrow night, so their next meeting is in May.
Thank you. Planning and Zoning Commission.
I was out of state. I think Mr. Nackstead stood in for me for the last meeting, if you have a report.
Councilmember Knoxted.
And I quite enjoyed it, too. Thank you. Planning and Zoning met on March 22nd, and they had a consideration of plat. The plat was for the Triumphant Theater, where they were they recommended approval of a plat where it divided a parcel into 2 lots, providing the space for the theater. There were no public comments. There was no exceptions to the plat, and it was a unanimous vote. Under public hearings, they had 2. They granted a conditional use permit to allow lodging on a property at 1035 Angler Drive. It's an existing family dwelling. It had an existing conditional use permit from 2012 for a lodge and a guide operation. And the new owners, they simply want to be able to utilize it for their own personal use and be able to use it for lodging at different times. So it was kind of a reduction in that conditional use permit. They considered it for quite some time. They had 2 exceptions. One would be that the septic system be DEC approved and that there be quiet hours between the hours of 10 p.m. and 6 a.m. The last resolution that they discussed under public hearing was granting an amendment to the conditional use permit for expansion of the Aspen Creek Assisted Living Facility. This is the one that's on Forest Drive. And there's 2 large buildings that are already there that are parallel, perpendicular to the street. And the project, I think this is pretty interesting, by the way. What they're going to do is the new owners are going to build a new wing that basically connects the 2 buildings together from the 2 entrances all the way across. And then there'll be another wing that projects out the back. So a lot of the traffic will actually go to the outside of there. It will bring the total number of units up to 65. From about 44 48, something like that. And their primary focus is memory care units for in there. And some of the seniors that were here were quite, and others that were appreciative of it, is they have friends that are in the other building, for example, but they have no way to get over there in the wintertime. It's just too far by wheelchair and all that through the ice and whatnot, but now they'll have a wing that goes through there with all these units. And they'll also be able to dine together if they choose to in the central area. So that was all approved. Sorry for going on too much about that, but it's actually quite a big development, I think, in our city. And they had two new business items. The student representative policy, no amendments to that. They approved that. And also recommended the council approval amendments to council procedures for commissions, committees, council on aging. No amendments there. Their next meeting will be April 26th.
Thank you. Beautification Committee?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Beautification Committee will be meeting next week, April 11th, here in Chambers at 6 o'clock.
Thank you. Under report of the mayor, I did attend the Lee Shore Choose Respect event that they do every year. They start out with a walk from our Leif Hansen Park down to the visitor center, and then they have a little luncheon and an update of things that are going on in their world. It was well attended, and enjoyed listening to some of the services, the vital services, I should say, that they provide for not only our community, but those from the surrounding area. On the 27th, we actually, in Chambers here, council, our city manager and city attorney reached out to several of the local contractors to talk about the recent code adoption changes and maybe some of the, problems that might exist for them and where, where that might lead us. And it was actually a very, very good meeting and a lot of good information discussed. And actually, Councilmember Dothett was instrumental in working with that, but felt he had a conflict because he has a building under construction in Kenai, so appreciate that disclosure. But what it turned into was a very good discussion, and then the possibility of maybe widening that group and then doing this more often. And I think it's important for us to have a collaborative relationship with developers and contractors within our community, but also hear concerns that they might have and barriers that they would run into, and obviously address those before, earlier in the stage than later in the stage. I think that's very important when you're doing construction. I did attend a local, transportation symposium is the best way I can describe it. Several members of the Borough Assembly were there. Borough Mayor, Mr. Cox was there. And I was late. I had a Zoom meeting prior to that, so I was able to catch part of that. And what I understand they were trying to do is sort of identify gaps and get information or identify gaps where they can gather the information to determine partnerships for local transportation within, not only within this central Kenai Peninsula, but also down to Homer and Seward. And I know the Kenaitze Indian Tribe is, they're working on a transit route through, at least between Kenaitze and Soldotna, starting small and maybe grant funding out from there to provide regular service. So very interesting. To me, I like data, so I appreciated a lot of information that they provided, but I wasn't able to catch all of the meetings. So last week I was asked to be a judge for the Boys and Girls Club State of Alaska Youth of the Year. And what they do there is they have applications from different clubs around the state. There's two categories. There's military and civilian. They had 3 military applicants and 2 civilian. Local. We had a local person that was one of the finalists for that. And so what they do once they get picked for Youth of the Year, they end up going to regionals and then possibly nationals from there. And it's a pretty big deal because the winners of those are pretty healthy amounts of money and scholarships. So it was very enjoyable. It was over at the Cannery Lodge, and I certainly appreciated being a part of that. I was able to attend, as you heard from Ms. Romaine, as most of you were here. I think Mr. Basin was planning on being there, but wasn't for the March for Meals, and really talked about that earlier. But I just want to mention again that it was a really good time. I enjoyed it, and I think it was one of probably the best one that they've done so far. Not that the other ones are, but again, that's one of my favorite events. I think just because of the time of the year, springtime, gets everybody out, kind of excited about spring and approaching summer. So my second grade granddaughter spilled to her teacher that I was the mayor of Kenai, so she asked if I would come and speak to her class over at K Beach Elementary, and they actually, yesterday morning I went over there, they brought the other second grade class in, and had a great time. I mean, they had a really respectful class. It was kind of neat listening to some of the questions they asked, and one of the teachers had been her older sister's teacher, and but it was very nice, very well-behaved class, very attentive, very respectful. I will say that the teacher sort of prepared questions for the kids and gave them each one, except for one. They had one class-sponsored question, and she asked me if I could guess which one it was throughout the process, and I figured out when they asked me if I had a bodyguard, I figured that was the one that came from one of the kids there. So I thought that was pretty funny. Let's see. Oh, and then we had our organizational meeting for the bycatch, Alaska Bycatch Advisory Council, as I mentioned I think it was last meeting, that as a result of our task force work, there was an advisory council that was formed through an order by the commissioner, under the commissioner or the Department of Fish and Game, that would sort of provide help, I guess, guidance, and to implement some of the task force recommendations. And so that does become a document that just sort of sits on the shelf and collects dust. So we'll meet, it looks like we'll be meeting about 4 times a year, probably quarterly, with reports given to NOAA, NIMS, and then the North Pacific Fishery Management Council. And then last thing I want to say is today we had, Terry and I were at the Kenai Chamber Luncheon, where we presented the 5th annual State of the City address, and appreciate the accommodations, and was well attended. Something like I said, we've been doing for 5 years now, started under our previous city manager, Paul Ostrander. But I think it's a good way for us to, connect with the business community, answer questions, and kind of give them a lead on where we're going. And again, constantly reiterate that, that hope for communication of things that, they may think that we should do as a council regarding, policy and direction. So, thank you. I appreciate that and enjoyed it. And then with that, that's my report. And I will go to the city manager, Mr. Eubank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. A few things to report on here. Last week, when I returned, I met with Samantha, the new director there at the chamber. Had a great conversation, and really looking forward to working with Samantha and the chamber and collaborating on a number of things here in Kenai. I think things are headed in a really positive direction. On March 6th, the mayor joined myself and Peter Avon, the executive director for the Kenaitze Indian Tribe. We had lunch together, talked about a few things that are going on, both with the Kenaitze Tribe and with the city, and gave an update on where we were with the Old Town Playground project. So we had a good meeting. And last Tuesday, Colonel De La Rosa and Randy Bowker were here from the Alaska Army Corps of Engineers. Colonel De La Rosa is the commanding officer for Alaska. They gave us an update on a couple things with the project. Very optimistic. It doesn't seem like a whole lot's been going on, but honestly, there really has been a lot of things going on behind the scenes. Once the 2022 WRDA bill was passed in Congress, the Corps in Washington, D.C. was tasked with developing the guidelines to implement the program in the 2022 WRDA bill. And the guidelines in there, or some of those guidelines, are what would give the opportunity to reduce the city's cost share on the project from 35% to 10%. And I'm happy to say that those guidelines, I think, were issued in March, and Colonel De La Rosa submitted a letter requesting concurrence that the city of Kenai does qualify as an economically disadvantaged community, which would then qualify us for the 10% cost share. That determination and the program guidelines, where we qualify as a city, is one of the guidelines is that if our local unemployment rate exceeds the national average for the latest 24 months by at least 1%, then we would qualify. During that calculation period, our unemployment rate was 6.11%, and national average was 4.39%. So the city is going to qualify for that 90-10 cost share, and Colonel De La Rosa did seek concurrence on that opinion. So sadly, Colonel De La Rosa's assignment here in Alaska is going to end June 30th. He's going to be transferring out to a new assignment. We'll be getting a new commander. I know he's very interested in getting the project partnership agreement signed prior to his leaving Alaska. He would really like to have that project completed. So I do expect that we will have that agreement come before council for authorization and signing probably end of May, early June, try to get that done before he leaves. I think he would really like to make that a very public signing. It's a big step in the project. It's going to do a lot of things, but it's also going to put this project on the street for bidding and get contractors out there looking at it. So on the surface, it doesn't seem like a lot's going on, but I think a lot of the delay we've been seeing here lately is to deal with this, the provisions of the 2022 WRDA bill. Again, that Senator Sullivan was, I believe, the sponsor of, and that's going to reduce the city's cost share by millions of dollars, and I think it's probably well worth the wait for us, and not going to delay the project a year or anything like that. Again, you know, the mayor mentioned he and I had the privilege today of doing the State of the City address, and you know, I really enjoyed it. You know, I really felt like it was an opportunity to brag about a lot of the positive things that are going on at the city. We had nearly all department heads there, got to introduce those to everybody in the room. You know, like I told the crowd there today, they are the brains of this organization, and they're what make the city what it is. All of our employees, and really proud of the job that they do. Give you a little update on budget. We are working through the process. I was fortunate enough to get Larry to come back and join and join the team and help me through this. You know, I got to tell you, Larry's probably one of my biggest mentors professionally in my career. As a finance director and now as a city manager, and I feel really lucky to have him here and his experience. So we'll do everything we can to get you that draft there on the 19th. We do have a personnel working group here at the city. It's a number of department heads that we have been meeting and working and discussing a lot of the personnel challenges that we're having, some of the issues we see in our code, and propose some changes. We will be requesting a work session with council to go over some of the work that group's been doing and some of the recommendations that you might see being brought forward. To speak about recruitment here at the city, you know, Stephanie Randall joined the city as our HR director from the hospital. This is her 4th week. We will be interviewing 3 candidates on Friday for the finance director position. So hoping that we're able to land one of those. As you all saw, we our Parks and Rec director, Mr. Walker, is resigning. He's going to become the head ranger down in Moab, Utah, of 3 state parks down there. But we're going to miss Brad. We've got that position on the street. It closes on Friday. Honestly, at this point, I don't know the status of the applicants in that, but I know we have a handful, certainly not as many as we'd like, but hopefully we can find a qualified one in there. We've got numerous summer positions to be filled, both for Parks and Rec and for the PU fisheries. So if you know any individuals out there that are looking for some great summer jobs, if you got any college students or high school students, to encourage them to apply. We are filling those positions now, but there still are more to be filled. Last thing, tomorrow, I believe it's Department of Labor that's hosting a job fair. It's going to take place over at the Old Cars Mall. You will see a pretty strong presence by the city there. We'll have a number of our department heads manning a booth, talking about employment opportunities with the city, and just frankly talking about the city as a great place to work. And hopefully we can drum up some candidates through those types of opportunities as well. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions of the city attorney, Councilman Warrior?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Thank you, Mr. Eubank, for your report. You covered a few of the things I had wrote down, so thank you. I won't touch on those, but I've noticed that there is spruce bark work being done. Could you speak to the spruce bark, and then also when the dump site will be open?
Mr. Eubank.
Thank you, Councilmember Winger. The work going on, so we have our first spruce bark beetle mitigation project going on. It's taking place in that drainage between kind of Floatplain Basin Road and Forest Drive over there. We do have a contractor in there, Doug Cook's Tree Services in there, removing a lot of those trees where, the terrain's just not safe for our crews or even the public to get in there and harvest. That work is going to continue. I think it goes all the way down through that drainage and extends into Municipal Park. Once that's complete, I know the fire department is looking at their wildfire mitigation plan and proposing the next areas to put out on the street and get contracts in to start removing those trees as well. So we are moving forward with that, and I think they're trying to get in there and get some work done before the bird nesting season and things like that. And as far as the slash site, I believe that's supposed to open early June. Is that correct, Mr. Curtin?
Mr. Curtin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Manager Eubank. Actually, we're hoping to open it sooner. I'm trying to work towards in early May, but with the amount of snow that we have out there, and as you may recall, last fall the mud was pretty bad. So we're gonna add a little bit of gravel to the entrance just to make people driving in and out, make it a little more accessible to them. So May 1st might be a little overly optimistic, but I will have it open before June 1st.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Further questions of the city manager? Seeing none, we'll go to the city attorney, Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, members of the council. I don't have any comments, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions of the city attorney? Seeing none, we'll go to the city clerk, Ms. Sainer.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I have no comments available for questions.
Questions of the city clerk? Seeing none, we will go to additional public comment. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to address the council at this time? Yes. Mr. Cox.
Thank you, Tyson Cox, Sodatna. I was just going to say how I'm pretty disappointed that Resolution 2023-24 for BSA increase did not pass. I will say I'm not surprised with the outcome of the first vote. What I am fairly surprised with is how strongly this council felt about it to bring it back and then make sure that it's tabled indefinitely. That shows quite a quite a view of what the council thinks of where our schools and our students need to be and what's happening in that direction. I just really hope that the folks in Kenai also agree with that. As far as some of the other items that I was hearing is I think there was a lot of misinformation, and I'm hoping, well, with it tabled indefinitely, we can't go back to that even if there was. So the bond package, there was talk about the bond package and how that was essentially the choice of the school district. That's not true. The school district and the borough administration put the package together. The assembly voted on it. And then essentially the people of the Kenai Peninsula Borough voted yes and said that's what they wanted to do. Next, Ms. Winger had made a statement of 4 students isn't a big deal and adding 4 students to classrooms. I will respectfully disagree. I think that's a huge deal. And I think there's a lot of teachers that would think that's a very big deal. I don't even know who would say that. Anyways. One other comment was, Ms. Sonnert, you had talked about music teachers and how the schools get to choose those. I 100% agree, but that's not what's being cut. What's being cut in this budget right now without any increases are the techs that run the theaters, are the pool managers, and then the athletic directors and some of the sports programs. None of the programs you're talking about are being cut. So if that was why you voted on it, that would be a poor reason to vote on that. Another one that you had talked about was that the school district is being held captive by some of these monies. Any agency that is a government agency that does not have its own source of revenue is always held captive. They're held captive by the ones that do. The municipalities, the state, they're the ones with the source of revenue. They will always be at the will of the source of revenue. So that's not something that will change no matter how we fund it. Another one that was talked about was, Ms. Sonnert, you also mentioned that in your time of being a teacher, the only things you got, I think you said you got an instrument and a smart board. That's not true either. You continued to get your benefits, you continued to get your health care, and you continued to get wage increases. Those are all things that come from this. And so you continue to always get those. But what I'll end with is with such lack of good information, I would strongly suggest going to maybe some of the school board, not their meetings, but their finance committees. I've spent several days, you can do it on Zoom. I've done it while I'm working on my computer, on my business stuff. You don't have to be there the whole time, but they're 2 or 3 hours long. But maybe spend some time, go back and listen to the last 2, and you'll find out reasons why they voted the way they did and why they chose to cut the things that they did. They did not choose to cut those items for reasons of, hey, we're going to have the public come out. They chose to cut those items, and they talked about it that way because those are items that they can bring back, knowing that there's probably going to be at least one-time funding. Again, it's much harder to bring back a teacher after we find out how much money we have in July than it is to bring back some of these other positions. Because some of those other positions, the people actually aren't leaving, they're just doing a different job until that happens, and then they can get their other job back. So like a theater tech or a pool manager, they very well could have tenure and still be able to work in a different position, and then they would get that job back if it came available. In the teaching positions, they just leave, and that's what happens. I was a teacher myself. I taught for 1 year in Nikiski Elementary, and at that time they were pink slipping everyone every year if you were not tenured. I did not get my job back. I ended up actually becoming a plumber after that, and I made a lot more money doing that, and that's what I stuck with. But I would have stuck with teaching if that not happened. And I think I was fairly decent, but I was also a local person here. That's not what's happening now. When people are leaving, they're taken off. And part of it is, a whole discussion about our retirement, but they're leaving because they can and because we don't have a stability for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. Thank you. Appreciate it. Is there anybody else from the general public that would like to address the council at this time? Anyone? Seeing none, we'll go to council comments. Councilmember Douthit.
Thank you, Mr. Cox, for coming in, bringing up some good valid points, and I hope we all take some advice from it and look into it deeper. As far as the job fair, it was mentioned it's coming up. I just went in there this evening and poked my face in there, and it's going to be a big event. I encourage people to swing by if they know anybody that wants it. There was I talked to Sarah Bieber. They got 53 vendors set up this year, so that entire area has got tables. I walked in and I was kind of in awe at how many tables they had set up. So they've really pushed the advertisement, and I really hope that we get a good turnout. We'll have a presence there, hoping and crossing our fingers for employees like everybody else. So I think it'll be good. I really am looking forward to working with Mrs. Springer. I think she's been doing a great job hitting the road running and has some really good ideas. And I encourage everybody to keep an eye on the 24th date for the fundraiser this year, or June 24th, and then it's going to be an outdoor event, and I think it'll be a lot of fun at the chamber. Something totally different than we've done before, and there's going to be some neat events, and then it's a neat theme, and I think it goes along good with the summer attire, and I think it should be a good event. So that's about all I've got.
Thank you, Student Representative Thibodeau.
Thank you, Mary Gabriel. I got a couple things to talk about with the school. One, Monday and Tuesday, yesterday and the yesterday after yesterday. Is that how that said? I don't know. Monday and Tuesday was honor band and mass band. All of the schools on the peninsula came. It was Nikiski, Homer, all the schools you're thinking of. I personally was in both the honor band and the mass band. Both of the bands both got to play 3 different pieces each. And I'm not sure if anybody came to the concert that was Tuesday, but it was very fun. And so that happened. Baseball season is also going to be starting up soon. Practices are every day, 3 to 5. And our first game will be the 21st of this month. And it will be in, what's that one island? Kodiak, yes. It will be at Kodiak. I'm terrible with names, I'm sorry. Be at Kodiak. Love you, Kodiak. Yeah. And our first home game will be May 2nd. Track season is also starting up. I've seen a lot of their practices as they start before us. I don't have much to say on that. I'm not in track. And then prom will be, I believe, the 16th, maybe the 15th. I'm a mess. But yeah, 15th. And the theme is Moonlit Night. Moonlit Garden. And that's all I have. Wonderful day, everybody.
Thank you, Student Representative Thibodeau. Councilmember Sonard.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. First, I'd like to thank Mr. Cox for coming tonight and spending your time talking to us and giving us points to think about and points to research in the future. So thank you. I'd like to congratulate Silas on making Honor Band.
Thank you.
Yes, congratulations. And I'd like to thank Kathy Romaine and Red Pierce and Missy for all their work in putting together the Kentucky Derby Bash, the fundraiser. It was a wonderful evening. Dinner was really delicious. I enjoyed every mouthful. It was good. Thank you.
Councilman Raskin.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I too thoroughly enjoyed the Wheels fundraiser. That was one of the best fundraisers I think I've been to. My husband and I tied for the costumes, so that was even fun. And I got to donate 4 chickens to the chicken coop thing, so I'm down 4 chickens. I'm pretty happy. Yeah. Thank you. Welcome, Samantha. I look forward to working with you and seeing all the great things the Chamber's going to have happen. And thank you, Mr. Simmons, is that correct, for stepping in and assisting the city, and enjoy all that wonderful sunshine, but it still is icy out there, so that's all I
Thank you.
have.
Councilmember Winger.
Thank you. I want to first start off with thanking our roads crew for clearing the fields and the tracks. One thing I noticed is our kids were planning their season while Soldotna was still out there with the snow blower slowly chipping away at clearing theirs. So Just to speak volumes from Kenai to Soldotna, we took care of our fields and they're out there, and Soldotna is still pushing away on a snow blower. So thank you, Scott, and to your crew for getting out and doing that. I did see them bundled up, the parents bundled up in the stands this last weekend, and my kids did ask to go, and I politely declined. I also want to thank Lieutenant Ryan Browning from the Honomer Police Department, who has been traveling around the area doing a parenting in a digital age. He came up to the Kenai Nikiski area and gave that class. It was, I heard people that said that it blew their mind on the information that he gave. The statistics were very alarming. It opened up a lot of conversations for people. It's something that they're not putting out online, so definitely if you can make one of their next courses locally, I'd encourage you to go. And just would like to thank Red and Kathy at the Senior Center for an awesome event. It is my favorite event. We ate pie for a week straight in our house before we decided what pie we were donating. So we're a little deserted out. And finally, I just would like to say welcome, Samantha. Let us know whatever we can do to help you succeed at the chamber, and look forward to everything that you'll plan this year. Thank you.
Councilmember Basin, Vice Mayor Basin, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. Good meeting tonight. I think council members had great data up here on the decision they made on the resolution. I don't appreciate assembly member coming in here and attacking some of the members on the data they have. We disagree, and it's okay to disagree. You have those type of disagreements in your chambers all the time. And what you saw tonight was a good discussion, and I think the ones who voted here knew what they were voting on. It's not about the kids. It's not about the teachers. You mentioned you being a teacher. I think you also have another family member who's a teacher, so you have a bias in this situation that you didn't bring forward to this group. So, you know, I think you should apologize when we get done with this meeting, because of they don't deserve what you said. We wouldn't come into your chambers and do that to you, not in this role. So you should think about what you said. Go back and watch it. I don't think it was proper what you did to these members. I know I have the data, and I disagree a lot with what you do. I understand. I've been part of the situation. I understand the funding and how it works. My beef is with the state and how the state does this funding, and they don't have a plan in place to do this stuff that they want to do. We've got members who are elected. We can all go talk to our elected members. That's where this starts with. This didn't need to be in these chambers. That's my thoughts on this process. Good night.
Councilmember Nexon.
On a happier note, Larry, I didn't think I'd see you back here in chambers. Wonderful, you know, good to see you back in the building. And Samantha, didn't expect you either, but I just met you. So wonderful program today and everything. So glad you're with us. I did enjoy the Meals on Wheels fundraiser quite a bit. I think it was probably the best that I've been to. I've been to a number of them, and hard to top that. Great fun. I'm still eating pie and cake from that. So went to the chamber, State of the City today. I thought that the mayor and the city manager did an excellent job, and it was well attended and everything. But thank you for doing that and all the preparation that you did. And lastly, I'd just like to wish everybody happy Easter.
Ditto on a happy Easter. Thank you, Councilmember Naxted. And this evening, we have no executive session or pending items, and seeing no other business for this body, we are adjourned.
Goodbye.